Well, there's no use waiting around. This region is a good spot for the guild, lots of people needing help. I just heard of some pests causing trouble nearby, and there's a village not too far from here where you can pick up some jobs.
What do you want to ask him about? I'll do it again. Just, what do you want to ask this NPC character about?
There's no use waiting around. This region is a good spot for the guild, lots of people needing help. I just heard of some pests causing trouble nearby, and there's a village not too far from here where you can go and pick up some jobs.
This is going to be Arydia Pass We Dare Tread. I am Alex Radical from Board Game Co. Welcome to my channel. If you're new here, like, subscribe. I don't do that stuff. I don't usually do that stuff. In any case, this is going to be my review of Arydia the Pass We Dare Tread, which is going to currently be on Kickstarter. There's going to be a link to that down below, and I am not going to be covering absolutely everything about this game. There's a lot to cover here. There are multiple amazing videos you can already watch. I highly recommend the Dice Tower. Mark Stree did a full video of it, as well as Jeremy Howard from Man vs. Meeple. You can check those both out. I'll try to link down below if I remember to do so. But this is Guild Leader Thades, and this is the NPC you're currently engaged with. And this is Arydia, which is going to be offering you a RPG, exploration, combat-based, leveling up character, all those kinds of things in a sort of open world, sort of contained journey and experience. One which I have had the opportunity to go through the prototype, and I am absolutely blown away by it. Now, I will talk about various highlights of what's going on here before jumping into what I like, don't like, all of that. But this is an incredibly impressive experience, and I'm saying that as someone who does not particularly enjoy the openness of RPG experiences. I like journeys, I like exploration, I like sandbox-style adventures. I've typically enjoyed them most on the PC, on video games, on consoles, on those types of experiences, because they tend to give me that open-world feeling while being within a self-contained environment, which is what I personally am looking for. Now, Arydia does give you that as a board game in a way that many board games have done things similar, but I think Arydia has best captured that feeling. Like I said already, this is a Guild Leader Thades, and he just said a bunch of things. Now, you could play this encounter two ways, depending on your group, depending on your playstyle, and different people I've played with this game with have preferred it different ways. Someone like myself, I'd like to actually see the options, the little drop down of characters, the choices I can interact with the NPC. Other players like to just listen for the keywords and then ask questions. Jobs, you say? Can you tell me more about jobs? Ah, yes. The guild has job boards in all the villages and towns. They don't usually provide squills, but if you need to earn some coin, it's a good place to start. Villages? Where are the villages? Oh, villages. Fellsworn villages nearby. Just head north across the plains and you'll be at the gates. The gates? What gates? I don't seem to recall anything about gates. This game has that aspect, that experience, where you can literally give people the option on the cards as you engage with any particular character, or alternatively, you can literally just listen for the keywords, ask questions, and play that out. Play what out? I don't recall anything about that experience. You can go through that little NPC repeating cycle of whatever as you play. That's just the interactions of the characters. Now, characters will have a degree of learning and remembering as you go through this world. Characters will have moments where they get replaced by a new version of that NPC because, well, you have to interact with the new version of that NPC because that NPC currently knows where you are in the world and what events have happened in the world. So characters do evolve and develop. Now, at its core, let's take a step back from this little dive into an NPC. But at its core, you're going to start with Arydia with this world map situation. You're going to start with a particular area and then start navigating around, and you're going to navigate to two various locations and then dive down into that location. You'll move to a particular region and then dive down into this region over here. You'll dive down over here, then maybe you interact with the hut and you put down a location, then you interact with an NPC in that location and head down into the cellar. You'll be fighting enemies while engaging with NPCs while leveling up your character because there's a lot of leveling up to do. You're going to have the various classes, and these adorable classes, by the way. This is going to be pick your own character class creation as you can swap in. I shouldn't pull that too hard. It's not coming out. This definitely comes out. There we go. You're going to pull heads out of their bodies and create your character with their little, who they are, who their race is. We have Rix, the Cold Elf Sneak over here, and we have Parrot, the Silent Dwarf Novice. These are going to be titles, classes, roles, and races that are going to be adjusted as you play through the game. You're going to have your full board full of the way you're going to level up and unlock characters at any given point. You can only bring 5 of them into battle, but you might choose different ones as you engage in different scenarios. You're going to have your strength, your wisdom, dexterity, all those RPG elements as you slowly level up and as they modify the various interactions, the roles you encounter in the game. You're going to have an entire player board full of equipment and armor that will give you skills, that will give you abilities, that will give you protection, but it will also falter in battle and need to be repaired. And then we have the combat itself. The combat itself is an interesting little puzzle of trying to engage with enemies while dealing with the situational positioning as you engage against that giant rat. You're attacking it, you're trying to set yourself up, but then you're going to have your weapon and you're going to have different strike zones with your weapons. And of course, those weapons will be upgraded as the game goes on, as will the various enemies you encounter with. But the basic idea is you'll have a weapon. Let's take over here. Let's take the practice stave from Parrot the Silent Dwarf Novice. Now, I don't know how well. Let's see if we can zoom over here. It's going to have these little icons over here that you're going to see the amount of die rolls you'll need, the strike pattern. So this weapon hits from the top, and then if you hit enough rolls, it's going to shift over to the right. So for example, we're going to go ahead and grab my die over here. We're going to roll, and it's going to be a 9. A 9 is going to be a single point of damage against the rat from any top column downwards. We're going to go ahead and hit this, let's say, over there. Then from there, we're going to try to attack again, and we get this time a 12. 12 is going to be enough to actually hit that 10 plus. So we're going to again hit downwards, like so, but this time we're going to strike to the right as well from that downward stroke. So you have these little strike patterns on enemies, and you have your different strike patterns on your weapons. Weapons that, by the way, this particular staff over here is modified by wisdom. So since I have 2 wisdom right now, any roll I had would actually be modified upwards. That 9 was an 11, wasn't it? So that previous roll actually was a hit now that I'm thinking about it. But anyways, you're going to have these strike patterns, these weapons, these abilities, and then you're going to have your host of skills depending on your character, depending on who you are. Maybe you're trying to taunt all the enemies towards you. Maybe you're trying to push people away. You're trying to interact and engage with a variety of different enemies in different ways as you play through Arydia. That's the core aspect of this game. The core idea, like I said, is the giant open world exploration of which you'll engage with NPCs, you'll engage with characters that are particularly well written. I can recall one particular character we engaged with where one of the person I was playing with was insistent that it felt like a trap. Insistent. And I was like, no, what are you talking about? This is a normal, regular encounter. And, well, someone was right. One of the two of us was right. But I will say the fact that they have that nuance in the character interaction, the fact that they have this, the way that a character can interact with ourselves as we explore the world, as we talk to them, as we ask them questions, to the point that that nuance allows for the idea that one of us picked up on the trap and the other was clueless. This is not some obvious, oh, well, clearly they're trying to engage with you or whatever. There's going to be nuance and depth in the character. There's going to be things that are permanent changes to the world you are living in as you have different encounters. Whether you choose to search for that noise that happened over there and perhaps encounter a small child, whereas if you don't, you may never see that small child again. The world remembers your choices in Arydia, the paths we dare tread. The world remembers who you helped, who you hurt, and it gives you a certain amount of freedom, not perfect freedom. You will have a degree of having to progress towards certain pathways. But speaking for myself, having gone through this prototype a few times now, I can tell you that I'm playing with both solo as well as other players. I can tell you that I've had different ways you can go through the prototype, different journeys and choices of, well, I'll go this way first, no, I'll go that way first, and it may end up having to hit the same story points. Keep in mind, this is a prototype, so I have limited experience with just how large this world is going to get. But I can tell you from what we did experience, you can go down different pathways from one path to another and engage in the world in a different order and engage in the world with different elements that will or won't happen depending on the choices you make in this game. It truly feels like a sandboxy RPG experience, one where that sandboxy RPG has one of the best interactions of NPCs and world building that I have seen so far in a game, but at the same time, doesn't compromise on the combat, the RPG, the powers and abilities, the leveling up. But what I will say is this. Let's go ahead and get into some of the likes and don't likes, all of that, the things to be wary of, the things I am particularly engaged and pulled in by this game. So, this statement that I'm about to say next is something that I've rarely, if ever, said about a board game. This is a game where, as I'm having combats, I am looking forward for the combat to end so I can go back to the exploration of the game. I am not a story-first person, not generally. I am a mechanics-first person, and the story is something that builds me up and is something that adds to the experience I'm having, but is not the experience I was looking for. Now, I want the combat in Arydia, to be clear. I enjoy the combat. I like it, I want it, I'm happy it's present. But when I'm in combat, I'm looking forward to finally killing that enemy so that I can go back to the exploration, so I can interact with the next character and make the next choice as I try to see what else this world has to offer, which is astounding to me. And that comes from that, maybe it's the PC gamer in me, maybe it's the fact that I have played video games for a large portion of my life, and it is a throwback to those kinds of interactions, but with the fun and social elements of doing it with a player with you. It does give that throwback nostalgia experience to me, but it does so ridiculously well. You really do have choices to make. You really do have choices as to where you'll explore, what you'll look for, what you'll find. You can bypass entire side story elements depending on the level of exploration you have. Story elements you may never actually find out more about. Story elements that might give you clues as to how to interact. Going back to, let's say, spoiler-free approaches, we definitely had instances where we encountered things that should have been a clue to us to not do something else, and yet we missed it. We had the clue, we did the thing did not work out well in our favor, and we were like, oh my gosh, the game warned us. The game warned us, the game told us on an entire separate exploration element that we could have never explored to begin with. But we did explore, we got the warning, and we still ignored that subtle hint of the warning and proceeded to have not the best things happen to us in this game. So that story, that choice, that world building is absolutely delightful in this game. It is amazingly engaging in pulling me in. Now, the game's not short either. You'll look at this tile situation over here and be like, well, it doesn't look particularly large, but any particular tile in this game could easily be an hour plus worth of content. An hour plus, mind you, not an hour necessarily. You'll have different points of interest to explore, you'll have different events, you'll have job boards. You may well go back to the same places. I don't actually necessarily know some of the ways this world will develop. I can tell you that the NPCs will change in a way that it makes sense that you'll go back to different places. You will explore the world, you'll go through travel, journeys, and adventures and dangers as you go, and you're going to level up your characters in a way that seems immensely rewarding, although again, I've only been able to go so far, given the fact that this is a prototype. The combat I enjoy in the game. Now, I don't love it. I think it does some things incredibly well, so let me tell you the pros and cons of combat. The combat in the game, I love the weapon system of having a weapon that will strike in different patterns and different pathways, and that will potentially cross different points. As you can see on this card, those little orange points, because you have a strike pattern in your weapon, if you cross an orange point, you will end up doing additional damage to various points on the enemies you're encountering with. So you want to take into account your teammates, your options, your abilities, and then try to figure out the strike pattern that will most optimally take down the enemies you are engaged with. It's an interesting little additional puzzle on top of the general combat. Rolling the D20, D20s are an interesting beast. Sometimes the huge nature of the swings and randomness can make them less fun. But Arydia handles that beautifully by having the amount of damage being a progression. So it's not a binary single point of you pass or fail on the D20. You may pass and fail multiple points, almost always doing a single point of damage depending on the weapon, but being able to potentially do more as you go, as well as having modifications from the various ways you've enhanced your characters, as well as these role-playing points you'll get from reading cards in your gruff tone of voice. Role-playing points. Tell me more about those. Role-playing points, you see. Those are going to be various points you can earn as you pretend to be various NPCs in this world. And those points can be cashed in for an epic moment of a glorious feat that you and your characters have encountered. But be careful. You'll have to narrate what exactly epic feat you have done and why. This gravelly voice is not the best if I don't have water nearby, so I'm going to stop doing the gravelly voice because that's not great for the on-camera stuff. But anyways, that's going to be the combat aspect of Arydia. Now, there's going to be an aspect that as you move around the game, you and your allies are going to generate combo as you take movement actions. So as you tactically reposition yourself, or perhaps use various abilities, you'll generate combo in the game. Combo that can be traded in to activate some of your abilities, but it's a shared resource for your party. Something you'll want to keep in mind as you choose. Well, sure, that ability looks cool. You'll pull all the rats towards you, but that ability might take out the boss instead, so which way do we want to spend the combo? Meanwhile, the enemies are generating threats on their cards. They're going to be generating threats on their cards over there. Let's see if we can find this giant rat card over here. And then when they activate, they're going to cash in on the threat that they generated, always trying to take the most devastating action that they can. So perhaps we get the whip action over there. It's going to move 5 and try to target as many enemies as possible. So that rat's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Head over there, and now it gets a giant whip where it can hit both of us, which is trying to tactically position itself to do, that is horrific by the way, that is going to be a 3 damage attack to both of us. That is not good. One of these characters might die, depending on where that strike lands, depending on whether it hits a point of armor. You'll roll a die to determine where it goes. Let's see which die over here. We have the blue die. We're going to roll the blue die to see where it hits, and it may or may not hit us on a point of armor depending on who's wearing armor, who gets hit, all of that. So I enjoy and appreciate the combat for what it's doing differently and the way it handles it. The area of combat that I would say I'm most concerned about, although again, prototype and limited experience, is the combat in this game has escalated as I've gone through it. You start off with a training dummy just so you can learn the basics. There's no threat at all, but that will escalate to having combat where you actually have to make decisions. Now, I haven't yet found the combat to be punishing enough that I've really ever feared for my life, which is a good and a bad thing depending on what you're looking for. For myself, when I play these giant exploration games, I'm not personally looking to lose. I'm not looking for that amazing reset where you lose and start again or something, but Arydia is going to, well, I don't actually know exactly how Arydia is going to handle death itself. I've heard different things. I'm not going to go into that. But I'm not looking to lose and reset. I want the game to be hard, but I want to feel like I'm making hard decisions. I want that presence, that moment of feeling like I could lose at any given point. And I haven't yet really felt that I could lose a combat at any given point. Potentially I could see it happening, but I think that there needs to potentially be higher degrees of harder combats to have in this game so that I can enjoy the combat system because I like it, but I want to feel a drop more challenged as I go through it. So that's something to be mindful of for myself as I continue to go through the game. But to be very clear, I'm not in this game for the combat. I'm in this game for the world-building experience and the giant degree of role-playing, and not role-playing necessarily, but the story building, the narrative, the NPCs, the interactions, and the discovery that the game offers me instead. Another big thing to be mindful of in this game is going to be that seventh continent problem, the filing system aspect of the game. This is a game where the prototype has been incredibly easy to work with, so I'm not complaining in that sense. But the prototype is also offering me a more limited experience. The final game will have 300 plus map tiles, hundreds and hundreds of cards, and it's a lot easier to manage that system when you have, a dozen map tiles and 100 or so cards. Trying to navigate, trying to say, okay, well, we're going to pull out map tile 73 and trying to rifle through this box of the big map tiles over here. It's going to be going, looking, no, and pulling it out, putting it on the board to engage with it. That will add a degree of both in middle of the game setup that you have to manage as you go through. New map tile, grab that, put it out, and have a new overlay. Okay, draw a new card as we figure out the event because we're on that new map tile. That event's going to interact with a new NPC, so now we need to replace the NPC. There's going to be a small degree of filing in the game, of paperwork, of filing as you figure out, well, putting cards back into your various slots and then grabbing cards out, putting map tiles back, grabbing them out. This will have a degree of pausing the game to constantly do or grab the next thing you need. Now, I haven't noticed it as being that much of a problem in the prototype, to be very clear. It's been fairly quick, fairly streamlined. But like I said already, I'm working with fewer elements, fewer components, so that's something to be mindful of in the game. And I would say that mindfulness carries over to not just the in-game aspect, but then the tier up and the tier down and setup of the game. This is a game that is going to be a campaign game, not a legacy game. You can continue, reset, replay. There's no destruction of components, but it's going to be a campaign game where if you play it through the game, you're going to probably have to put it away at some point. And then the same question rears its head. How much will memory serve? How much will the tier down and setup be a factor as you decide, okay, great, I had a great Sunday afternoon. I played Arydia straight for 8 hours. It was amazing. But now it's time to pull it out again. Are you motivated enough to do so? That is, speaking for myself, that is always a constant challenge and question that I have to ask when I'm going through these campaign games. Now, I believe I will. I believe the aspects of this game that I enjoy and like, and the ratio of work to reward, I think that is 100% there, but it is certainly something to be mindful of as you go through the game. Another thing to be mindful of, and this is not a problem for me at all, but might be something you want to be well aware of, is going to be the replayability of this game. You are going to go through the game, and I've talked already about the fact that you can make different choices, and you can experience the game with different characters. So there's going to be a lot of that aspect of the game, of different ways to go through the experience, but you certainly will be hitting a lot of the same high notes of the game. Now, I don't know how a full campaign plays out. It's possible you won't even explore this whole basin. I don't know. But it's very also likely that you will experience some of the same interactions, the same elements of, well, I'm going to talk to that person again, potentially make a different choice. So if replayability is a factor to you, the replayability of Arydia, I believe, is present, but I believe it also takes a hit on your second play. It is a game that you will go through, well, I've already had that interaction. Now, like I said already, I've gone through the prototype a few times now, both as a learning game with them, and then both myself solo, and then with another player, and it hasn't gotten old for me yet. I enjoy showing and sharing this game with new people, and being like, oh, now you talk to the person. Let me be Guild Leader Phase, because I can do this. Okay, great, go ahead. Ask him a question. Go ahead, ask. I'm excited to share the journey and exploration, particularly with people who I believe will enjoy this game. I think that covers most of where I am with Arydia, the Paths We Tread. This is more of a first impressions than a review by the very nature of not being able to fully dive into this campaign game. This is going to be a game that offers you a giant world with a lot to explore and a lot to go through, and I've only been able to get the very tip of the iceberg there. So this very much is a first impressions review, so to speak. But Arydia, the Paths We Dare Tread, if I were rating this game today, it would be a 5. This has been an amazingly a 5 to be very clear, 5 out of 5. This would be an amazingly delightful experience, one that is not only incredibly good at what it does, which is an important metric when you're picking games. You want games that are the best at what they do. But something else that Arydia does well, it is almost innovative in what it does. Games come out all the time, amazing games that I love. But sometimes they're hitting on those same story notes of other games. Sometimes they're minor adjustments. Well, I could have this game or that game in my collection. I like them both. Do I really need both? Arydia is combining a lot of things from a lot of different games, then bringing its own twist, its own spin, and feeling like a RPG, PC, world-building, exploration game, and doing so in a way that I haven't really seen any other game hit all those notes quite as well in quite the same way. This feels like something unique while bringing in elements of many of the things that are familiar. This is a game that I am very much enjoying, very much looking forward to diving down further into the full experience. My biggest caveat for myself is going to be that accessibility issue. Both the in-game accessibility of rifling through 300 tiles and 700 cards to find the cards you need, and then more importantly, having to be mentally cognizant of this card gets removed from the game, so it has to go into the removed from the game area until I'm done. And then when I'm done with that, I have to actually reset it to potentially play again. And I also have to pull it out next Sunday. Those are all going to be the biggest factors that determines the level of play this game sees. The most similar comparison is going to be Seventh Continent, which had many of those same elements. And Seventh Continent is a game that I really enjoy and really love, but also sometimes get that fatigue of, do I really remember where I left off? Do I really want to figure out where all these card piles are because I didn't properly put them exactly where they're supposed to go? Do I even want to clean this up or dive into the next story? The answer is usually yes, but the question is always present at the same time. And so that is absolutely something to be mindful of, especially considering the price point on this game. I hope you enjoyed this review of Arydia, the Paths We Dare Tread. I believe there will be some more gameplay content coming on this game if you want to see, obviously with spoilers, but if you want to see the way people can go through the game and the experiences they can have. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, have a good one.